my new series, The Art of Leading, Captivating Leadership Narratives, all part of the stuff that growth is made of. And I'm excited to introduce you to Stephen Toboroff, CEO of Woolco Foods, and one of my founding members of my Vistage CEO Peer Advisory Group. I'm so glad to have you, Stephen, as my first guest. I'm a huge fan and admire your thoughtful leadership approach. So very
Well, thank
excited
you
for
very
you to
much, Margaret.
participate in
I'm
that.
I'm I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Good. So I thought we would start the conversation, Stephen, by having you share just an overview of what does Woolco Foods do and who your target client is.
Sure. So Woolco Foods is a broadline food distributor. People who are familiar with nationwide publicly traded companies like Cisco or US Food, we do the same thing they do, but regional, all of New York City, suburbs of New York, and all of New Jersey. And we sell pretty much everyone in the hospitality space, from restaurants to caterers to institutions to bakeries, anything you can think of. Everything they would use, from their produce to gourmet cheeses to non-food items. And our business is really one of service and meeting the needs of our clients so that we can get them the products they need delivered to them at the quality they expect when they expect it.
Great. Thank you for that. Also, it's amazing. I know the first time we met, when you talk about that, you actually have over 10,000 different products that you offer. So the depth and breadth is really impressive.
Yes,
So would love for you to share a little bit about your career journey and how you got to where you are now as the CEO of Woolco Foods.
sure. So I graduated college in 1992, and I had a few different jobs, from working as a script reader to working in the restaurant business in various capacities. And I lived in Chicago and found my way back to New York. And I wound up working at Woolco for a few years. My father owned 50% of the company. Another individual who was not related owned the other 50%. And I worked there in various capacities for a few years. And then I went to law school. And while in law school, enjoyed that very much, had a job lined up in corporate law. Never really thought that I would practice law forever, but certainly enjoyed it. And my father passed away. This was in 1999, sort of unexpectedly. And his partner asked if I'd be willing to take the stock as opposed to the buyout. And I thought about it and I said, yes, I would do that because I enjoy business. I saw a tremendous opportunity there. And as much as I enjoyed the law, it wasn't something that I really wanted to make as a career. Although I finished law school, passed the bar, and have done some work pro bono. And that was, as I say, in 1999. At that point, we were located in the Gansevoort Street Meat Market. Since then, we've moved to Jersey City in 2004. We've got 2.5 acres here, about 1 mile outside the Holland Tunnel. We redid the whole building, and I'm just delighted with my decision. I've really enjoyed this business and being in business in general.
Yeah. One of the things, just from, we've known each other about a year. I really appreciate how you really continue to challenge yourself in terms of taking things to the next level. So you don't sit back and say, oh, business is good, but you are always looking to think about how you can improve it, whether it's routing or another area of the business. So I really appreciate that you continue to push yourself in terms of being the best leader that you can. So as we go back a little bit, if you look back in time, what advice would you give your younger self based on where you are today?
Well, what I would say to my younger self, and luckily I took a lot of this advice, but I didn't take all of it, is, handle those aspects of life that are important, that are within your control. So, eat properly, exercise, avoid alcohol and negative substances, and be very open-minded, read, be eager to learn. And then once you get beyond that, then the advice I would say is be very clear on what your goal is. And you can have several goals, write them down, And then the important thing is after you write down what your goal is, and you really have to visualize it, write down the steps that you know that are going to be required. So I guess I'm getting kind of detailed, but what I would say to my younger self is, if you're blessed to live in America and you have a lot of other advantages going for you, what you want to achieve in life is possible if you're willing to put in the work and put yourself in a position daily to maximize the probabilities of achieving it. And as I say, there's so many things that are within your control right off the jump that if you don't get correct, it doesn't matter how great your idea is, how talented you are. If you're lazy, if you're out of shape, if you're undisciplined, if you're unfocused, it's not going to work. So that would be the advice that I would give myself. Start with those fundamentals, make that the foundation of your life, and build from that and hold
Yeah.
yourself accountable, but in a positive way.
I love that because, again, it's easy to understand it now. There are so many things that are out of your control. So what are the things you can control and focus on that? It's great advice. I would leverage and give advice to my younger self as well in terms of that. So when you think back in terms of early in your leadership roles, what are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, there were many challenges in the leadership role, but to make it sort of impactful, I have to look at myself and identify where it was that I needed to improve. And I've learned a lot about leadership over these past several years. And I think the first thing is I really had to do a much better job exercising self-control, meaning that just because a circumstance made me frustrated or angry, or just because somebody on my team in the organization behaved in a manner that was so clearly, I don't mean from a behavioral standpoint, I mean, just because people disappointed me or let me down or circumstances were frustrating, excuse me, I had to learn as a leader that ultimately it's incumbent upon me, again, get self-control, get clear on what you want to do, model the behavior you want, have the difficult conversations with people, but do it in a way where you're not demonstrating anger, frustration, emotion, condescension, none of that. What I found I needed to do is identify exactly what it is that you want out of the circumstance or the situation and find a way to communicate it. There's a great quote I heard somewhere, which is when you're about to say something, you find yourself in a state of mind where you're a little bit agitated or whatever. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? And does it need to be said by you? And I've really
Mm,
utilized that throughout my career. And what's wonderful is I have a great group of senior leaders here as well. And I find that a lot of times the message that I want to deliver is delivered in a more impactful manner by somebody else. A lot of times what I want to say doesn't need to be said in that moment. It needs to be said by me. So that was the real challenge in leadership always comes down to dealing with other people. Like I
yeah.
said at the very beginning, you got to start with yourself. If you cannot manage yourself and you can't lead yourself, then you can't lead other people. Once you get to a place where you are working on a daily basis to do the best at leading yourself, then you can start leading other people. But then you're dealing with other dynamics because now we go back to there's all kinds of things you can't control, yet you need to have an impact on these people. How do you do that? And what I found is it doesn't come by trying to impose a sense of urgency or urgency is not the right word. It doesn't come from displaying sometimes an intensity or a disappointment. It can come through a variety of different ways, but that's where the challenge comes from, dealing with people. But thank God, I think I've gotten much better over the years. And I utilize whatever tools are available to me to achieve that objective. And if it means that I'm not the one delivering the message and it's done by somebody else, that works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are also, you have this amazing self-discipline. And again, you're very thoughtful on reflecting on, you know, something that just happened. How could it be done differently? And I love your quote. I love, it's really good advice. Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by you? Or could it be said more effectively by someone else? So those
No,
are,
it's
are
true.
great words of wisdom.
And I would just say, just very briefly on that, what I've learned is that if if a circumstance is one where you're not responsible, then it's impossible to make an impact. In other words, if you go around and you blame other people or circumstances or anything, then you're essentially giving away the power. It really does come back to what I was saying before, and I appreciate your compliment. I mean, there's a lot of people that are much more disciplined and all that than I am. I like to view it just as a process and almost being mindful. That's the thing in being mature, just taking a step back and just doing a brief self-assessment.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm very frustrated right now, or I'm very excited. It can go the other way too. Sometimes you have to control your emotions and not be overly exuberant. So that's basically the challenge with leadership and how I've tried to address it
Yeah.
and improve on it.
Yeah. And with maturity, you have more insights on that, although not everyone does. Not everyone gets there, but thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So the past few years have been very challenging, especially when I look at your business and anyone that's in hospitality or the food business. It's just been challenging for leaders and business owners. What are some lessons that you learned or aha moments over the
Well,
last few years?
thank you for that question, because it's an important one, and I would say the following. The challenge of the pandemic and the various restrictions and challenges that were superimposed on it in our market in New York and New Jersey was unlike anything I've ever experienced. We'd been through 9/11, which was a tremendous human tragedy, in 2008, and Superstorm Sandy. But this was of a magnitude that I had never thought of before. If you'd said to me before it happened, hey, your revenue is going to drop 82% in 1 week. Your customers are going to be essentially shut down either in full or by some capacity for over 12 months. There's going to be a constant negative drumbeat of negativity and antagonism towards business from the leadership. And you're going to have to figure out a way through that. I would have been very disconcerted. What I learned in the aha moments that I would share with other people is, first and foremost, the only liquidity you bring, in other words, it's very important to have a disciplined balance sheet. It's always tempting in any circumstance, and sometimes it's appropriate to take on a lot of leverage and to do things. But I've always found that that's not in alignment with my psychology. So I think it's important to just be disciplined and always have your balance sheet conservative. Be aware of your expenses, understand the numbers of your business. The second thing I learned is, and I really learned it this time, you hear these cliches and all this stuff, but what I learned is, if you're the leader in a circumstance like that, regardless of how you're feeling, and I felt awful, it was anxiety inducing, and it was stressful, and it was
Can't
unpleasant,
imagine.
but you have to show up and you have to let everybody around you buy into a positive vision for the future. I have a podcast, and if you listen to those episodes, when I'm interviewing people, I'm always talking about when we get to the other side of this. You just have to, and believe me, I want to reiterate this so that people don't think I'm trying to sound braggadocious here. I lost, and I was not overweight, but I probably lost 30 pounds from just not eating, and many sleepless nights and all kinds of anxiety and all this other stuff. But regardless of how you're feeling, you have to step up and be the leader, because everybody's looking to you.
Yeah.
And you show that through your actions. And I learned that, and I learned it in real time. And I also learned the blessings of having a great team around you. Because if it wasn't for the senior managers in this organization, we would not have gotten through it. They were unbelievable in their commitment, their decision-making, their dedication, which is not something that you just snap your fingers and have. That's built over years and years of working with people and developing trust and respect and giving them that position. And then you just got to hang in there, and you got to show up every day and fight, and you got to keep yourself motivated. So during that whole time, I'm looking at David Goggins on Instagram. I'm reading books about Napoleon and Churchill and George Washington and Jackie Robinson and all these heroic people to keep me inspired, who had to go through much worse challenges. You got to keep yourself up, motivated. You got to cast a positive vision. You got to fight every day, and you've got to just do your best and not quit and put one foot in front of the other. That was the aha moment for me.
Yeah. Boy, so many great nuggets and lessons learned. And as you said, you lost 82% of your business. You actually did a great job in trying to find a way to pivot, and you've
And you
come
know
out
what I will
stronger
say?
on the other end.
And I will say this, that period of anxiety and discomfiture lasted maybe 8 weeks. After that, I just made a decision. No matter what happened, we're either going bankrupt or we're going to turn this into a positive. And we did. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? You have
Mm-hmm.
to sometimes lean into these crises. Like one of the things we did, and it was great for a while, is we started delivering to people's homes. Everybody did that. But I knew that was going to be a short-term thing, but it kept people going. It showed me how great our team could be. We had a website set up in like, I don't know, day and a half, and we were delivering. We transformed the business. It was a great exercise to see what you could do in a crisis. But ultimately, what I also did after about 8 weeks is I looked at the circumstances and I started. You have to keep yourself calm if you can and activate your intellect. And I'll give you one observation of many that I made. Every news story seemed to have one nugget of it that had to do with the restaurant industry. People are always talking about when will restaurants reopen, when will the bars. So that showed me people love the hospitality industry, that it's not something that can be so easily disintermediated with technology. Because there were people 2 years before the pandemic who said, well, with Grubhub and Netflix, people are not going to go out to eat. And I realized, no, that's not the case. In fact, when we get
People
on the
like
other
the
side,
experience.
right,
Right.
people like to take pictures of what they're doing and put on Instagram. People
Yeah.
like to dress up. People like all these different things. So I said, when we get on the other side of this, we're going to be dealing with a new level of demand that we'd never had before, which was true. And I also realized the importance of the relationship that I had with my customers, meaning that even when things were locked down and I had my sales meetings, I said, call people, be somebody that they can talk to, be somebody that they can share their stress with,
Yeah.
lean into this, call, we can't, again, it goes back to what can you control? We couldn't control the decisions that were being made outside of us, but we could control whether we leaned into it or hid under our desk. And as difficult as it may have been for some people, we made the decision, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to reach out to people. We're going to be a source of strength and positivity and solution-oriented interactivity for them. And I will say, by the grace of God, and I will say, since you asked my question, and I prayed a lot. I really relied on prayer, and I was like, and then I just like, I'm just not going to quit, And thank
Yeah.
God it all worked out good. It all worked out
Yeah.
very well.
No, it's a great success story, and it'd be a good Harvard case of what to do and what are the stages you go through and how to come out positive on the other side. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So come back to today. What would you say your biggest challenge and opportunity right now?
I think our biggest opportunity is there's so much market share that we don't have, in the market. And we really do. I mean, I know everybody, or I would hope everybody that has a business would think so highly of their business that they would say what I'm about to say, but it really is objectively true in this case. There's so many substantial ways that we differentiate ourselves from the competition, that we create value in so many different avenues, whether it's on price, whether it's on service, whether it's on ease of use, whether it's on quality. And so the opportunity for us is immense to capitalize on that. And there are other subsidiary opportunities that emanate from that, but that's the main one. The biggest challenge that I continue to work on is what is the most impactful and efficacious way that I can communicate to the marketplace beyond what I'm already doing, which is inside sales reps, outside sales reps, search engine optimization, social media. If I can do a better job unlocking the key so that people understand better who we are and what we do, to sort of reverse engineer it, Margaret, if everybody, let's say there's 30,000 customers that would be in our sweet spot right now. If all 30,000 of them in this next 5 minutes really understood who we are and what we could do, we would be overrun with business. Because when we
and what
do
makes you
take,
different, right?
right, because when we do take business from competitors, and whether it's the big publicly traded guys or some of the larger or even smaller regional guys, they can't believe the experience they have with us. So that's my biggest challenge. That's our biggest challenge. I think that that's how I would cast it. We're always looking to improve the process. We're always looking to make things better. But that's the biggest challenge, which is actually kind of good because it fits in perfectly to what the biggest opportunity is.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And so how do you measure success as a leader?
Well, in the most basic manner, the way I measure success as a leader is, have I achieved the objectives? I set quarterly goals and I set annual goals, and I have more or less almost every day daily to-do lists. So the most basic measurement of success is, have I achieved that which I set down to achieve? That's the first thing. And if that's
Yeah.
going well, great. And if it isn't, why can't I do it? On the second level, I also say, have I demonstrated personally the behaviors and attributes and characteristics that I know are the most appropriate to be effective in my position? And if I'm doing that, that's also successful to me in my eyes, But
Yeah.
I would say the biggest, if you can't measure, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So in business and in life, if you have personal goals, as you know, Margaret, because we work on this a lot in Vistage, and you're terrific with this, you will find, I have found anyway, perhaps you found it as well, that the people who don't achieve their goals personally or professionally are people who are very adverse to accountability. They don't want to be confronted. See, if I set a goal that we're going to be up 15% and we're up 10%, I don't shy away from that. I want to understand it. If I set a goal to achieve a fitness objective or an educational objective for myself and I don't achieve it, I want to be aware of that and continue to work towards it. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But for me, I define success by, how do I benchmark against my quarterly goals, my annual goals, the daily objectives, and ultimately, am I growing as a CEO? Am I developing? Am I becoming a better communicator, a better person, a better listener? And I assess all those things.
If we were doing, kind of a promotional video on what makes a great leader, you just summed it all up right there. So thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
It's
My
going to be a
pleasure.
hard thing to follow. So just two last quick questions. I know you're an avid reader. What are you reading now? And what would you say your favorite leadership book is and why?
Okay, so in terms of I will share this with people. I'll tell you what I'm reading. What I'm reading now for pleasure is a few different things. I'm happy to share that. I was a literature major in college. I just finished Balzac's Lost Illusions, which I really loved, and I've read others of his novels. I'm in the middle of George Eliot's Middlemarch right now, which I very much enjoyed. I'm enjoying. I just completed Watchmen by Alan Moore, the
Mhm.
classic graphic novel, which was actually in my oldest son's honors class. I'm reading a book on Sherman's March to the Sea, and also a book on Washington's New Jersey campaign. So those are the books for pleasure. In terms of leadership books, for me, and I've read a number of business books, not as many as a lot of other people, but I do like to read a lot. For me, I'll share it with everybody. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is essential. For me, it was essential. And it touches on a lot of the stuff we say here. The title puts some people off, but I got a lot of value out of it. I remember hearing Warren Buffett talk about it and Strauss Zelnick talk about it. And I read it, and I've read it a few times since then. That would be the first one. Two great business books, so I'll just very quickly put them out there, From Good to Great, and also The Power of One, or I don't know what the Peter Thiel book. I have to get the name of that. I'll get it for you. I read it. It was the only book he's written, and it was a great business book. I believe it was Power of One or something. I'll find the name of it.
Okay.
But the second book that I would put right up there with How to Win Friends and Influence People is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And a lot of people, and that's a poem, and a lot of people, I think, again, have a very superficial understanding of it, meaning, it's about warfare, or it's about crass manipulation, or it's about,
About
they see the movie,
strategy.
yeah, about, about from Wall Street
Yeah.
and that whole thing. But it's a poem that really is about self-mastery. And I've probably read it and listened to it. I don't know. It's a work of art that you don't just read and put down. It's a work of art that you read, reread, and reflect on. And for me, it was essential because it helped me and continues to help me work on As I just said, self-awareness, self-mastery. So those would be the two fundamental, the best books I read: How to Win Friends and Influence People and The Art of War. But the other books are what
Thank you for sharing that.
I think it's important to read for pleasure as well. I mean, if you enjoy reading, if you don't enjoy reading, then
Yeah.
it wouldn't make sense to do it. But I can't tell you how much strength I got from my role models. Books that I read, like I told you, Jackie Robinson, George Washington, Malcolm X, Napoleon. When you have these role models, you have this great reservoir to draw on. And the thing about reading great fiction is great fiction when it's really great. Dostoevsky, Balzac, Saul Bellow. It's like philosophy and psychology rolled into something even more impactful, and you gain great understanding into human motivation, behavior, and all of that. That would be my answer there.
Yeah, it's great. And it's going to be intimidating for some of our viewers because you just listed a whole bunch that you are reading right now. As I think, sometimes I know I feel personally just getting that one is hard to focus on. So impressive.
But you know what I would say and here's something that somebody said to me a long time ago, and I would say, and it might make it easier for people. If you get one idea out of any book you read, it's worth it. So again, I'm an only child. I've been reading avidly since I'm probably 9 because I'm into it. Not everybody's into it, but you can get great information on YouTube. You can get, and I'll give another thing out there. David Goggins, his Instagram page, he has 2 books. One is called Can't Hurt Me. The other is, I haven't read his second one, so I don't want to misstate it, but he's phenomenal. So you can get information from YouTube. You can get information from all kinds of stuff. But I enjoy the reading. For you, those would be my recommendations.
Good. So I have one last question for you in closing.
Sure.
And we've talked about a lot of different things, but what would you say are the critical success factors or secret sauce to being an effective leader today?
I think to be an effective leader today, you have to realize that the world is in a great state of flux, but with that, it creates opportunity. You have to be open-minded. You have to be willing to learn, and you have to be willing to you have to be hungry for criticism, and you have to be asking a lot of questions, and you have to be somebody that doesn't resist change. There's a fallacy that a lot of people have, that just because they don't like something, they can then wish it away as if it's not relevant. Oh, I don't like artificial intelligence, or I don't like these mobile apps, or whatever it is. That's not reality. You have to divorce yourself from that narcissistic way of thinking. And as I say, be open-minded, be curious. And that's the secret sauce, is to really work on yourself, to be the best version of yourself in every aspect of your life, to love yourself. The real secret sauce, the most important thing for me, is my personal relationship with God. And that could be anything for anybody else. But if you have that faith and that connection, it's the most beautiful, amazing foundation you can have in your life. Then after that, do the things that the secret sauce is. Do the things that you know will make you the best version of yourself. It may seem simple, but it is. I guarantee you, the person that's well-conditioned, that eats properly, that's well-rested, that's not high or drunk, is going to have more energy than the guy who's coming in on a hangover and doing whatever he wants to do. It's just simple, man. And then as far as the other stuff goes, I think, as I just said, be open-minded, be a good listener, respect people, be self-aware, be willing to learn, and be curious, and be excited about the opportunity to learn and then execute. And that's the other thing. You've got to execute at the end of the day. You can't be the type of person that says, I'm thinking about doing this, or I might do this. You got to go at it. You got to execute it. And you will I know I have made a lot of mistakes, and that's unavoidable. But if you learn from them, that's okay. That's okay.
Well, you hit on so many important things that we could spend an entire day talking about. But thank you, Stephen, for sharing your thoughtful insights around the art of leading. And I know you are always looking for that one nugget, and that's something I really admire, regardless of the conversation and the situation you're in. You always are looking for what's something that you can learn from and make your business better. So thank you all for listening. Yeah.
And I just want to say one thing, Margaret. I want to thank you because jumping out of my comfort zone and joining Vistage and having had the opportunity to work with you has been tremendously beneficial. learned a lot and continue to learn a lot and have a lot of respect for you. So I wanted to take just a
Thank
minute
you.
there and thank you as well.
Thank you. And I feel very lucky to have you as part of our group. So thank you for that. So
My
thank you
pleasure.
all for listening. This is the stuff that growth is made of. Take care, everyone.